Welcome back, guys, to Becoming Classics Project KH. Okay, we've got the cases, all the engine cases, back from new vapor blasting, and I'm sure you'll agree it looks beautiful. Okay, so I've basically just been prepping stuff to get it ready for reassembly and everything a bit of a clean. Interesting to note the way Kawasaki have done this. They actually, in the casting process, they put cast iron or steel, whatever they are, sections inside before the aluminium is poured in, and then line board it to what would deem to be perhaps a stronger bearing support. I don't know, but you don't normally see that nowadays. So, well, I certainly don't anyway. But so we've got, all I've done up to now is measured stuff up. Moving on to the crank, we've got new crank seals in here and Kawasaki's spec. I couldn't find anything on actual side to side clearance on the rods, but online I've managed to get it. It's 0.550. We've got a 0.508 or 20 thou. So slightly bigger than that is maximum deemed service limit, and you can just get that to go in. So although we're close to end of life, well, not end of life, but rebuild perhaps, you know, it just goes in, so there's a little bit of life left, and at the end of the day it's not like this engine's going to be you know, commuting every day and that sort of thing. It'll be odd run out on Vintage Motorcycle Club, and that's that. So we've now got an in-spec selector fork. So I've just put all selector forks back on the drum. The drum isn't retained yet because we find it's a little, just gives you a little bit more play for bearing location before we actually retain the actual selector drum itself. So the forks are on the shaft, the clip's holding them on, the forks are just back on the shaft, and we're good to go to start putting the gearbox back in. Just a note on these: silicone grease on both ends of the crank seals helps the crank seals bed in, instead of it just being kind of, you know, either allowed to kind of run with just a fuel in, or I always prefer to just use a bit of silicone grease in there. So anyway, bearings are retained. I've just given it a bit of a light tap with a rubber mallet. She's seated properly. The bearing, this inner number 1, if you're talking right hand side, bearing is sat on its little half round like that, sat on a little half round bearing retainer in the cases, so the end float's taken care of. So we've got our two little half round bearing retainers here. We've got a pin there and a pin there. So for me, with this one, the first shaft to go back will be this shaft. You've got two selector forks to kind of try and steer, but we always need to make sure that the pins on the end of the selectors are in the correct scroll. So if we're lucky, sometimes some of these, just let me get that again. Just slide that gear over and try and line up with the forks. And that's it. Okay, next thing to do is just make sure that that bearing sits. There's a hole in the bearing that if you try to put cases down like that, that bearing is never going to press down onto, and it's been done. I've seen it being done before. You literally rotate that bearing until you feel it there just drop into, and the same with this bearing at this side, and also ensuring that our output shaft seal is seated in the correct position. Okay, so she turns nice, she's in there. You You can see the forks are actually, I've got control of those two gears. So the next shaft has got its clutch pushrod seal already fitted. We've now got the bearing retainer and another pin for this bearing, so somewhere in the region of that will go down. Got the one fork sticking up that's going to locate onto this. And if we can just steer that to the right, we should be sat down where it needs to be. Okay, so we've now got to just retain this. You can see the actual selector drum now is moving the forks in the scrolls and moving the gears backwards and forwards. Okay, so what we've now got is kickstart shaft. So I'm just going to get my 19. I've had to turn the radio off, as I've said before, because again, YouTube roundups is the better one, to the better word. On copyright, would you believe, for having radio on in the background? Hey, would you believe? Yeah, YouTube's roundup. Anyway, when I turned it off, it was that blooming Dance Monkey song, and I'm sick of hearing that, so it was no big deal to turn it off. But now if you have the music on in the background, you get a copyright. But anyway, all that Miley Cyrus one, anyone else agree? It's absolutely constantly on the radio wherever. Anyway, back to the job in hand. So, okay, so now we're slacking this. It's basically it puts the preload. What that is the spring there is anchored. I haven't noticed that, just a bit of old gasket sealer on there. So the end of the spring at one end is attached into this little groove, and then as we put a preload on the spring, this kind of camshaft quadrant comes round and hits the back of the, when that's wound in, hits the back of that bolt, which keeps a preload on this kickstart for us. So to install it, this little tab, there's a groove in here, it's going to go downwards, so that little tab is in that groove, so it just slides in that groove, and I'll show you why. When that goes down in there, and the end of the spring sits in that casing as I showed you, make sure that that little, and it is, it's in there, and then this bearing again rotate till it sits down. And what that is, on this Bendix part here, it's normally with a preload sat over there, so it stays away from there. When we come onto our kickstart, it moves into position with this gear, and if I turn it anymore, it turns the shafts and starts the engine. As soon as they take the kickstart back, it moves away from the gear, so this gear can now run with the engine running. So all we're going to do is turn it this way enough to keep that sat in there while we get the cases together, and then we can put a preload on it, put the bolt back in, and it'll keep a preload on the kickstart spring. Right, so where we're at, again, cleanliness has to be the number one everywhere. Okay, so we're about ready for, just make sure oily fingers and what have you haven't put like a trace on any of the crank's sat where it wants to be. And what I'm going to do before we do, what will happen here is obviously these will sit down. I'm just thinking whether I give that another, I might give that another blow off with the airline, which means compressor running again for a minute, so I won't do that just yet. What we'll do is yeah, I could really do it just to anchor it up. I've already done this one, so it's kind of just me wanting to where the bolt holes are. It's absolutely immaculate. So what's going to happen is obviously we're going to encase everything when we're ready. I need to get some 3-bond on now. I'm going to put it on this face. It's a lot easier because there are no studs everywhere, so it's a lot easier to put it on this one. So bear with me. Hate silicone. Never ever want. Hate the stuff. Even in 2-stroke. 4 strokes it blocks all the oil ways up. And you just don't want silicone. Keep it in your bathroom. Right. Right then. Okay. For me, every time 3-bond. Liquid gasket, rubber based. Okay? Yammer bond, whatever you want to call it. What the manufacturers use. That's why they never have a gasket between these two faces. It's a machine face, and all it wants is an element of this rubberized seal on the cases. So the actual face that's actually going to be sealing, doing the crankcase sealing. So just bear with me, because all I'm going to do is just give it a smear. Now this is internal here, except the stud, down the stud isn't. So at the end of the day I'm just going to, it does no harm to seal this from the gearbox. Seen a lot of people don't think about that, between that and that in the gearbox, but it starts, for whatever reason, can just draw on the odd bit of the gearbox oil in. There was definitely oil in a place in this one that it shouldn't have been. Having said that, never put it around where the seal is, or I don't. Do you know, I've done it. I have done it before that way, and it seemed to squash the seal wrong way, because it was, the seals are in an area that are exactly machined for the size of the seal, and I think the seals have got a degree of squish built into them for when they go down. So if you take a little bit of room up with this stuff, it can kind of squish the seal just slightly, minutely out of shape. So all I want to do is just give a smear to this, okay, and also where a stud's going to go through. Okay, I think we've pretty much covered it there. This stuff, when it squeezes out, which won't be much, but when it does, it kind of, how do I say, it sticks to the case. It doesn't like squeeze out and then drop off, you know, and end up in any new engines from Yamaha or whatever, you'll see it built with this stuff. It's all they use, and hey, you get to like what you like, and for me this is all I'll use. Okay, so there we go. There's enough there. A bit of cardboard for that. There's enough there. So I mean, you've got to act relatively quickly, but you make sure there's nothing on the face as it's going to. That's obviously outside the contact area. So yeah, you can get straight to. So just to double check before we do that everything's sat as it wants to be, because if we start tightening this down and there's something kind of not quite sat quite right, then we're going to have problems. Okay, so I think we're as good as we can be here. Excuse me. Right. So now what I'm going to do, there's just nothing on it, it's just me being me. Okay, nothing on it that's going to drop in. Okay, so we need to find now what we need to do is get all our crankcase nuts. Yeah, I thought they were 10s to so here we go. Do you know what I'm going to do with these? I'm going to pull it down so it's pulled together, and I'm going to, it's my failing that I didn't order new nuts for that, but they're awful, so I'm going to pull it together and then change them one at a time. They're just standard M10, I think they are. So I'm going to make sure that the washers are on every M10. I'll get some of them ordered shortly and just take them off one at a time and change them, because they'll like them. Okay, you see why I don't like them. In fact, just before we get going, see that 3-bom's alright for a good while, till you know, to get it to, I mean obviously you don't want to be waiting hours, but it's alright for a, now did I already have, let me just have a look here, some stainless, oh look at that, oh no, wrong thread, it's standard M10, they're M10 fine. Let's have a little of them in here. No, I'm going to order them. So I think that's just to prove the point. It is. Yeah, even that. Oh, that's fine as well. Right, I'm going to put it together with these, and then change. Like I say, one at a time. No big deal. Yep. So. Yeah, you can, I mean that 3-1 you can leave it a while, but it is best policy to try and get it. There's a stud came out in one, and it'll be that one. Right, okay. So what I'm going to do with these, in fact, change them now. I think we can change them now before we order. They're 5s, bear with me. Where did they go? In the nut and bolt store. Okay. Right. Get some neat washers on here, not horrible. Yeah, so after when this particular video is done, I'm going to go and order some gonna run everywhere first, and right, birds outside. Centre one, just I'm not going to put any hard loading on it. I'm just gonna okay. Just put a little bit of tension down there, and I'm going to do these now. So 14s. working in from centre out. Let's just get it together first. And just a little check before we go any further. Yeah, okay. It would start to tell you if you didn't like what you were doing. Okay. And work outwards. Okay, so we've nipped. Okay. So the sealant now, you know, the cases have gone together. I will torque it, I'm just going to nip it for now. Okay, I'll torque it when we get the new bolts, the new nuts on it, but at least I know it's held. Again, a check, she turns alright, seals wise, everything's sat where it wants to be. Crank seals all look positioned properly. Yeah, we've got our little one that's kind of hidden in there. The little push on one. So, right. So we've got enough of the washers, didn't we? We've got all the washers on. Yeah. So get the nuts on there. Okay. Find some better. I've got that blooming dance monkey song in me. Chucking head. So anyway, right, and it's also nearly dinner time. So now we've got a little bit of weight on the case's clamping force. Missed a couple there, a couple on the back of the engine there that want just belt and braces this now, isn't it? Just putting it together. So all that. Yeah, it's even when you're stripping it, it's dead easy to kind of miss. So many, certainly when they're all lathered in oil and one thing and another. But right, with that one, I'm going to put that in there. That's the one that the stud came out. Just going to see what happens with that one. We're all right there. One on there, and then. So yeah, be able to turn her over. There's a couple at the front there. Turn her over and I'll build the top. Now we want on there, on there. Here we go. So what we'll do, I think we've got them all, and then another one says, wee wee. Right. Working from the inside outwards. A nip, putting a preload on that sealant. And get the sealant to, and then, yeah, I kind of failed out. Enough going on at the minute anyway, but I never thought to change these nuts. I'm going to do because they're horrid. So, but I never thought to organise that. So working inwards from the inside outwards. Okay. And then as I come to tighten them up, there's enough on it to do what it's supposed to do, which is seal it and with that 3-bond on it and seal it up. So when I get the new nuts, I can just take them. I don't like them at all, horrid old. Right, okay, we're intrigued with this, so I can do that when I do the clutch and everything inside here. So yeah, we need to do the securing of the selector drum. So just move my big block and let's have a look. There we are. What about that? She's hey, looking good. Yeah, so you can see just 3-bond. You'll see, like I say, even on R1s or whatever, you'll see that stuff, and it just it kind of sets, you know, like a, but it's not silicon. Okay, so hate the silicon stuff. So you can see our new seals, and yeah, we're ready for part whatever it is that we're up to. But yeah, KX rebuild. So sorry, it's KH rebuild. Great stuff. Thanks for watching. Pick it up on the next one, and we'll take it from there. Okay, dinner time, and I will move on. Thank you very much.